Welcome to the Fast Lane. Nik Miles is our auto expert, so drop it into gear. You've got a green flag. Here's Nik.
I just got off a plane to spend some time with you because I know how important it is that we spend time together. I just went to the country that has more electric cars sold every year than gas cars. At least in April they did, to Norway. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the new Toyota Supra. From US News and World Report, John Vincent joins us in the studio today. John's going to be here for the entire show. What else are we going to talk about on today's show? We're going to spend some time talking about some new ways to get Wi-Fi in your RV. There is a very spectacular new Aston Martin that was unveiled. We're going to get to talk to Simon Sproul. He is the big chief and bottle washer in the marketing department at Aston Martin in England. And then Anton Walhman's going to join us. A new VW went on sale yesterday, and rumors have it that they sold 10,000 in one day, or at least took pre-orders for one. Something ridiculous. I think it's all lies, but we'll find out if that's true or not. John, we're having a spectacular month this month, purely because a lot of the cars we saw at auto shows over the last 6 months or so started to actually appear. Toyota Supra is out there, and that is probably going to dominate the news for the next week or two. Absolutely.
There's some great stuff out there that we saw in the tundra of January finally making it on the road.
I was sort of super excited about the Supra. I was very excited about driving it, but I was super excited about the Supra. But there's a lot of people prepared to hate this vehicle before they've even driven it, or because they're all saying it's a BMW Z4 with a Supra body on top.
I'm really surprised at the differences between the two cars, and how they look in the interior. Definitely there are a lot of BMW bits there, but they did a good job of differentiating the two.
You could tell, you could look at it and you could say, you know, it looks the same proportions. The interior is pretty much identical, with some sort of new bits and pieces tacked on there. But it doesn't handle. I've driven the Z4. I've driven the 4-cylinder Z4. And then I drove the Supra, and they don't handle like each other at all. I mean, that's all Toyota.
And the Supra does not look like any other German car.
No, it doesn't. It's definitely very bulbous. I always try to, I don't say break the rules, but I like to ride very close to the line, perhaps once or twice stray. That's why they have lane departure warning in Nik's life. And I asked at the Supra launch, which was in Virginia at Summer Point Race Park, if I could take the vehicle off to a corner and do a spirited start. I think those are the words I use, a spirited start. And so we had a film crew, and Toyota graciously provided for us. So we went out there, and I said, I'd just like to smoke the tires a bit as I start. They went, oh, are you going to do a burnout? I said, well, yeah. We're going to do it, but, you know, spirited start is how I'd like to title it, just in case there's any confusion. So we chose somewhere which was away from prying eyes, behind a big building. I think I've done the same racetrack was host to the Hellcat Charger launch, and we did the same thing, much more with the cooperation of Dodge at that point, because Dodge really wanted us to do a burnout, but like, I knew that we could do a burnout in this car. I chopped the tires a few times, rear-wheel drive. So we took it to this sort of back area, set the film crew up. I gave my cell phone to the camera guy, assistant, the camera guy. Said, just catch it on the cell phone as well as filming it. Did the burnout. I will tell you, surprisingly easy to burn out. Much easier than a Hellcat. Was much easier than Hellcat, much easier to control. Hellcat has a lot of power. This was 335 horsepower. Much easier to, was it 65? I can't remember now. Much easier to control. Where a Hellcat 707 is hard to control. You could easily lose it. And did a what I thought was a little burnout.
It was a nice little burnout.
Yeah,
it was not a Hellcat burnout. No, it was a nice little burnout.
Probably like 40 feet. The funny thing is, there's a second video that I did there that I had the camera guy come over to the window. There was smoke probably about a minute and a half, 90 seconds after, still smoke pouring out of the door handles inside the car, which was, to me, it was way better than the burnout. It was quite hilarious.
So they channeled the smoke as well as the sound of the engine into the cabin.
Yeah, they totally did. So, I didn't post anything that day. I waited until the evening, and then the evening I posted the picture. I posted the video, and stupidly did not watermark it. Everybody stole it. I would say about 40 to 50 websites stole it. Just completely lifted it off, gave me no credit, started reposting it. And I was like, whatever, like, it's my own fault. And it's not like, it wasn't like I was going to drive huge amounts more traffic to the website.
But you're probably now on Toyota's Christmas card list.
Yeah, well, I better be on the Christmas card list, because then what happened was I got a phone call from the office on the West Coast that said, have you seen Motor Trend? And I was like, why? Said, because your burnout is all over Motor Trend. Like, they are running. Have you seen Autoblog? It's all over Autoblog. I'm like, oh God, I should have watermarked it, whatever. And they sent me all these links, and I clicked on the link, and God bless Motor Trend. They redirected everybody to my Instagram account and basically said, there's our Auto Experts Instagram account. And they called it, like, everybody had these great things. They saved me from, like, having a teary night because they actually gave me credit.
So you're up to 12 Instagram followers now.
I think 13 if you count my mum's 2 accounts. But no, it was amazing. So one website had like 68,000 likes on the picture, on the burnout, within 4 hours. Like, it's one of those things you wish you were getting like 10 cents a time, because it was really great.
So can you do that same burnout in a Z4?
I tried in a Z4, and we didn't have a good place to do it, so I didn't try hard. But I suspect you could. But again, the Z4 was only the 4-cylinder. If you want to see that burnout, you can go to our Auto Expert Instagram account and just page through it, or Motor Trend, or pretty much anywhere else. If there's a red Supra burning out somewhere on social media, it's probably me. You'll see lots of those videos. A lot of fun. So new Supra going on sale imminently. It's going to be about $50,000. If you want the launch edition, about $55,000. And I'll say it's a car that I would really consider buying. I don't know if I have $50,000 and if I can afford $50,000 for a new car, but I really would. All right, coming up on the show, we're going to be joined by Perry Stern. We're going to talk about the Northwest Automotive Press Association Mudfest. That's where we took a bunch of cars, got them really dirty, and did them things you'll never do if you buy an SUV.
Keep listening. More of Our Auto Expert with Nik Miles is coming up. Start your engines and you're off. Back to Our Auto Expert with Nik Miles.
Exciting show this week, talking about a lot of the new cars, trucks, and SUVs that are on the market. So recently, Northwest Automotive Press Association had their Mudfest event. We talk about it every year on this show. Just to give you a recap, if you're not familiar with the event, this is where journalists from all over the Northwest, and some as far afield as Canada or even Arizona, come to test the latest cars, latest SUVs and trucks on-road and off-road to see what you should be buying in your fleet of vehicles for the next year or so, and give you our true and honest opinion. And then there are winners for these. John Vincent still with us from the Northwest Automotive Press Association. He is the president, but he's also with U.S. News and World Report. And joining us on the phone is our pal Perry Stern, who is the treasurer of NWAPA, and his secondary job is to write articles for various places, including MSN Autos. So first of all, Perry, let me ask you, this was the 25th Mudfest in a row. How many have you been to? Or have you given up counting?
I think it's been enough that I can't remember. I would say I've been to at least 10 to 12 of them, so at least half, if not more.
John, how many have you been to?
23.
23. I think I'm like the baby amongst you. I think I've been to like 8. Maybe 7, maybe as many as that. So it's a great event, 25 years. Perry, would you say that this was an event worthy of the 25th year?
I would say it went very well. I think if we'd had a little more mud, then it would have been a proper 25th anniversary mud fest. This was more of a dirt fest. But besides that, we had, a splendid collection of cars, a good group of people to drive them. And so I would say that this, was a proper representation of what Mudfest is all about.
Being a real journalist, if it had been like pouring with rain and like 34 degrees, you'd probably be complaining as well. So, just...
Well, being a real journalist, I'd be complaining either way. So.
Right. I do remember some Mudfest where we stood out in a field freezing cold. And then I think the following year we decided it was a good idea to give gifts to all the journalists and manufacturers of scarves and hats and things and coffee mugs. And it was like 74.
It was like 80.
Yeah.
It was like 80.
Yes. So it was a nice walk. Go on.
I was going to say, trying to plan an event around weather, especially in the Pacific Northwest, is not an easy thing to do.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about, John, read off the categories for us that we were looking at. So there's one winner in each category, and then there is
one winner and a runner-up in each category, and we have subcompact and compact family vehicles. We have mid and full-size family vehicles, compact and mid-sized luxury SUVs, full-size luxury SUVs, pickup trucks, and extreme capability vehicles.
So, Perry, tell me, on the extreme capability, we'll get to the good stuff first. We'll go right in for the kill. On the extreme capability vehicles, what caught your eye and what did you think was significant?
I would say that the Mercedes G-Class, it is all new this year. It's one of those vehicles that can go anywhere, even though most people unfortunately don't take it anywhere. But it can handle any kind of off-road you throw at it. And so it was fun to drive that car, over big rocks and down deep, pitches down into,
mud holes,
small floods. So yeah, it's while you're riding it, it's the utmost in luxury, but you do pay the price for that. It's not an inexpensive car.
And the Kardashians do that all the time, right?
Of course.
I like to make the joke about that vehicle. It's probably the most off-roading it's seen as a curb on Rodeo Drive. That's about as crazy as it gets. John, pickup trucks, what caught your eye?
The new Wrangler Rubicon, the new Jeep Rubicon.
You're not the first person to make that mistake, by the way.
Gladiator Rubicon. Well, what's important about it is it's more than just a Wrangler pickup. They actually went back to the drawing board and added some length to the car. They didn't just slap a bed on it. It's really functional.
It does. It did a good job. And I think that, I personally say, I think they're nervous about that vehicle's sales. I don't think they're going to have any problems. So full-size luxury, the vehicle that I thought was probably the best was the X7. I enjoyed that so much. I didn't expect we've had BMW at a bunch of events before. They're great, like mom cars. They're great, luxury, sort of very pedestrian-esque vehicles. But boy, they really turned all the stops out for the X7. I think that the X7 is really it's going to be a challenger to Range Rover, a big challenger to Range Rovers. There'll be a lot of people.
It's gorgeous inside. It's, extremely comfortable to drive. And, it's a vehicle that you wouldn't expect. Again, it's another one that's never going to go off-road, but it was perfectly capable off-road. It was comfortable. It could handle the bumps without, jarring you inside. They did a great job with it. I agree.
I think my favorite part about it is the fact that the armrests on the door are heated. It's so opulent. It's like, you're going to lean on the door armrest. You might as well be heated. I want my elbow to get cold while I'm driving around.
The center armrest is heated as well.
Yeah. Let's talk about the compact luxury, Perry. What caught your eye in the compact luxury segment?
Well, I seem to be continuing with Mercedes, but I really did like the GLE. This is brand new from Mercedes. It's the first time I'd been in it. And they've taken their kind of luxury, mid-sized SUV and given it proper off-road capability. And, of course, its big party trick that we were playing with in the parking lot is it has the ability to get itself out of a sand pit. So if it has no traction on the wheels, typically, in the olden days, you would go and wiggle, move the car back and forth on the suspension to try and get it to bounce out. In the Mercedes, you push a button and it bounces for you. It looks like it should be, driving down the street, as a lowrider.
My only criticism to that is when you hit that the button, the jumping button to get it out of sync, it doesn't come automatically with rap music. It should have rap music on it because it feels like it should be doing that, playing it while it jumps up and down.
I want to see that system in a Sprinter van.
Say it again, Perry.
Disco ball. You need a disco ball.
Oh, yeah, disco ball. All right. I'm showing our age here. I get it. And the mid-size family SUVs, John, the mid and full.
Yeah, the all-new Kia Telluride just crushed the competition in that category with good reason. That is a great vehicle. It's the typical three-row family SUV, but it's really, really capable when the pavement ends. It's surprisingly so.
Yeah, it's they did a great job for the price. I think the one that we had at Mudfest was priced at $43,000, if I remember rightly, something pretty close to it. And I looked at that and I went, wow, that's a lot of car for very little money.
And I had that, I actually drove it home from the event and had it for a week, and it is a car that I could live with every day.
Yeah, I think they did an amazing job. And then the subcompact and compact family, those were the vehicles which I think there's a lot of people buying vehicles in that class. One of the ones that really caught my eye, and this vehicle's been around for a while, but the Jeep Rubicon caught my eye in that category, and I think the Jeep Rubicon was
Renegade Rubicon.
Renegade.
Renegade Trailhawk.
Renegade. Did I say Rubicon? A Renegade Trailhawk, the little Jeep. It's the same, a lot of the same guts as the Fiat 500X. They share a lot of stuff in that vehicle, but that vehicle is outstanding for the price, and it's really good, and so that's caught my eye. So, Perry, let's talk about the course. So walk us through how you tested each vehicle.
So we had 2 days of testing. We do on-road testing as well as off-road testing, and the idea is to replicate what consumers are going to run into. So we do a slalom, which can replicate, what an emergency situation would be where you have to swerve around a vehicle or swerve around an object in the road. We park the vehicles and see how the cameras work, and cameras are all not created equal. There's some cameras that look like you've got a helicopter view from above. It's pretty amazing. And then we take the cars out on the go-kart track at the Ridge, which is the location where we did this event. They have a very technical go-kart track that's wide enough for these vehicles. And it's a place where you can kind of push the vehicle a bit without being out on public roads and without getting into much trouble. But it really gives you an idea of what the vehicle feels like on the road. And then the next day, we have a couple different off-road courses. One is for the extreme, and there's only certain vehicles that can go into extreme.
And then the other one is basically for everybody to do. When we come back, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about who won and why they won and how many points they had. As our auto expert continues with the Mudfest winners.
Stay tuned. There's more to come with Nik Miles. Jump right in and put the pedal to the floor. Our auto expert with Nik Miles continues.
If you just spent some time joining us, we are talking about the Northwest Automotive Press Association's Mudfest, where all the members of the journalists who are in the Northwest area take all these SUVs and trucks out onto the test track and really get them dirty or in this case dusty this year because it was nice and sunny, and also put them through their paces, and there are winners. So we've talked about the categories and what impressed us the most. I think you might see some correlation between the winners and what impressed us so much. John, you did the tabulations for this. How, overall, how close was this year?
This year was really close, and this year was the most diverse group of vehicles we've ever had in this competition. Everything from a Hyundai Kona to a Ram Power Wagon.
Yeah, there was a lot of different vehicles. Perry, did you obviously have seen the winners list, and we'll go through that in a second. Did you agree that everybody that won would be something that you think was worthy of winning, or did you have any objections?
Actually, this matched my voting pretty closely. So I don't think any of the winners don't belong in the spot that they earned.
That's interesting because usually the best I can do and what I vote for comes second. It's usually, but this year I think there's like 4 out of the 6 places were actually what I voted for. So I think it must have been pretty unanimous. John, why don't you walk us through the winners and the spread, because there was a runner-up as well.
Okay, subcompact and compact family utility vehicles. The 2019 Subaru Forester Sport was the winner. And the runner-up was the 2019 Jeep Renegade Trailhawk. Let's not start any rumors here.
Yeah, we're having all these trouble with with the Jeep names as well. Pretty obvious vehicle. I mean, it's pretty obvious to win. I mean, it's
especially in the Northwest. I mean, that is the perfect, starter SUV for the Northwest.
All right, and number 2 in the mid and full-size families, what took away the title?
The title was the Kia Telluride, the all-new Kia Telluride.
Yeah, it would have been crazy if that didn't win, because that vehicle for the money, $43,000, you're getting some things you get in luxury vehicles.
But the surprise was the runner-up, which was the 2019 Toyota 4Runner TRD Pro.
Yeah.
4Runner being probably the oldest vehicle in the competition.
Yeah, was it about 15 years old or something? Maybe it's not that old. Yeah, it is not far off. 12, 15 years old, something like that, since it's been overhauled.
Yeah, and product cycle, it's way old compared to everybody else.
All right.
It's really one of the last few truck-based SUVs on the road.
Right, and still a bunch of fun. I have a Tacoma right now that I'm test driving, and it's the sort of same makeup as that vehicle, and it's just still a great vehicle.
Perry, how would you describe the color of that 4Runner?
Did you hear that, Perry? John asked you what you thought about the color of that 4Runner.
It was very, very blue.
Painfully blue. What would we call it? Like, it's sort of a blue that doesn't appear in nature. Have you ever seen those chroma key screens that they use in TV and the movies? They have a green and then a blue color. It always reminds me of that blue chroma key color. The sort of thing that doesn't appear anywhere in nature.
Maybe if you shoot it with the right camera, it would disappear.
Yeah. The color was quite painful. The compact and mid-size luxury was won by
Mercedes-Benz GLE 450 4MATIC.
Yeah, no surprise there, right, Perry?
No, there's no other car that can bounce around like that.
The runner-up was a little bit surprising to me, though.
Not to me.
Really?
Acura did a great job with the new RDX, and it deserved that win.
I think it did. There's only one thing, maybe 2 things, apart from the transmission would be one, but the push-button transmission. But the other thing that bugs me about that vehicle is the what do you call it? The interactive screen, infotainment push thing that doesn't work. Touchpad that doesn't work.
It works for me. It takes a little time to learn, but it works.
So normally you put your finger on these things and an icon appears on the screen, or a pointer, and then you scoot your finger around to whatever you want to point to, and then you push down. In this one, you actually have to, the screen is resembled by a piece of square plastic, and you have to push down on the screen where you want to click. And that drives me nuts, because I'm used to putting my finger down and sliding it.
Nick has never used an iPad.
We just need knobs and buttons back.
I vote for that.
I vote for steam power. The full-size luxury vehicle was... we did run up. Full-size luxury vehicle was won by...
2019 BMW X7.
And the runner-up, which was the only other car in the category...
Mercedes G550.
And then the pickup truck was won by...
Jeep Gladiator Rubicon.
And the runner-up?
The massive 2019 Ram 2500 Power Wagon.
How close was the split between those?
It was pretty close.
So one or 2 votes could have gone either way.
A few votes.
And then finally, the extreme capability of the year was won by...
Also the Jeep Gladiator Rubicon.
And then the overall vehicle was won by...
The Gladiator Rubicon.
So it took away 3 trophies?
It did.
Wow. And you didn't have to vote for your overall winner, the same as you did for your... same as you did for each category, right? You could have voted for something that you didn't vote for in a category as the overall winner. What was it? So the runner-up was?
The runner-up was the Telluride.
Yeah, and I would...
Very different vehicles.
I think that could have gone either way. It was
interesting because we scored on both day 1 and day 2, and on the on-road day, the Telluride would have won overall.
Yeah, it was a good vehicle. All right, Perry. Well, overall, I think a good job with Mudfest. Now that vehicle takes away the crown. The trophies will be awarded this summer to to the winners in a ceremony in September, and then again we'll do it all again next year, finding out. So if you want to know more, you can just go to the Northwest Automotive Press Association's website, but it's a .org. Don't forget, it's NWAPA.org. You can see more there. Coming up, we're going to talk about RV Wi-Fi, and Perry will join us again later on in the show to talk about Hennessey performance. He was lucky enough to play with some Hennesseys. All right, that's all coming up on Our Auto Expert. Stand by.
More of Our Auto Expert with Nik Miles is on the way. Our Auto Expert continues. Here's your host, Nik Miles.
If you've been listening to the show recently, you know I've started this new fascination with RVs and going RVing. I'm a little scared, but I've been getting into it. We've had a bunch of people on to talk about RV stuff. And one of the products that I came across was kind of interesting is this thing called RoadLink from a company called Togo. And what this does, well, why should I explain it to you when we have an expert who's going to come on and talk about it? Joining us on the phone is Steve Hileman from Togo. He's the Vice President of Marketing. Steve, thanks for taking some of your Sunday out to talk to us. So you have come up with a solution. So all those people who got their kids into an RV and then realized that this might not have been the best idea because they took all their devices away, you found a way to keep them connected.
Yeah, that's true, and that's a great use case there is to keep the kids connected. We also obviously see the use case of those of us who work and travel, and staying connected on the road. It's become a trend, and we've provided solutions specifically for RVers.
So tell me how it works, because, you know, there are cars that come with Wi-Fi in them, but I've never heard of an RV coming with Wi-Fi. So you've developed a system that uses RVing, but why couldn't I just go to AT&T or go to someone else and buy a hotspot?
Yeah, you can. The big challenge today is, where do we like to RV? Well, we like to RV in places that are, sort of further away from the population. That tends to be where we travel. Those are the places where it's harder to get signal. There are lots of devices like hotspots from AT&T or Verizon or whoever, and they have limitations and restricted data plans. And what we did was we worked with AT&T, hardware manufacturer, to create this rooftop antenna that not only gets you 4G LTE data to power Wi-Fi inside the vehicle, but also acts as a Wi-Fi booster. So if you happen to be in a campground that has decent Wi-Fi, or you're close enough to McDonald's or Walmart or something to hijack their Wi-Fi, you can actually, get that boosted signal and reproject it back inside your vehicle. So it gives you a couple of options to get an antenna up high on top of your vehicle, above some obstacles, and boost that signal into the vehicle for you and your family.
There's so much more than a Wi-Fi provider as well, because I always have these visions in my head of the kids going, we'd like to go to Starbucks for lunch because they have Wi-Fi when you're on the road, because it's the only way they could do their Snapchat as well. Wasn't the idea originally to get away from all this stuff when people went RVing, and then probably worked out it was a bad idea to cut their kids off from the iPad?
Yeah, it's really interesting. KOA, which is Campgrounds of America, put out a big research study recently, and they proved that we Americans want to disconnect. We say we want to disconnect and get out and sort of reconnect with nature, and that's so very true. But there are still some things that enable us to do more of that if we have connectivity, right? So their research showed that we actually stay out camping on average 6 days longer if we have good connectivity. It enables us to log in, pay a bill, check in on work, do the things that sort of keep the office and the house and the normal life running, so that you can stay out longer with the kids, with the family. And as you're alluding, like there's nothing that quiets the kids down more than Netflix or access to Snapchat. So.
I'm thinking, I got now a million questions, but I'm thinking that this might be a good reason just to get an RV and get rid of my house, and I could just drive around the country. If I can be connected, it'll probably save me a lot of money. Is this good enough quality to make phone calls? When I usually go to Europe, I use Wi-Fi to make my phone calls. So is it good enough quality to make a phone call with this Wi-Fi or not?
It is. Obviously, it's going to depend on the quality of the signal, and you can get a little further away from a quality, signal with a big high gain antenna mounted on the roof of the RV. But you still have to have access to that signal. So it's all relative, and there are going to be places where you're going to have 3-4 bars and really strong signal, and there are going to be places when you struggle to get some sort of 3G speed. It's all dependent upon the cellular network or available local Wi-Fi.
I almost feel like I want to plan my RV trip via the good Wi-Fi. I noticed a few things by reading your press release. This works while you're moving as well.
It does. So, that gives you an option to, it projects far enough that if you're in a motorhome, obviously it's, projected inside the vehicle. Or I think, Mike wanted to call it an engine home. I think that was the more correct definition of that. But it also works in a travel trailer. So if you leave it powered up in a travel trailer and you're towing it in your, big F-150, the kids can have access to that, while they're sitting in the back of the truck. If your truck doesn't have Wi-Fi or if you need a little bit more bandwidth.
I noticed it says it also works 50 feet away from the unit. So you could technically resell it to the rest of the campground.
Yeah. I'm not sure AT&T would be too ecstatic about that, but yeah, I'm sure. I know my son would probably peddle off the Wi-Fi passcode to a neighbor kid. That's a valid point.
I just see this as a whole problem.
So what does this cost?
Well, the hardware kit itself is $399. And then the data plans through AT&T are specific to Togo users and RVers. And the unlimited data plan from AT&T for this is $360 a year. So it's an annual plan. You pay once and you get unlimited service for the whole year. So that breaks down to just $30 a month. Divide that by 12. Which is a pretty incredible price for an unlimited.
Wait, can I get one of these? I want one of these in my home now. I mean, maybe I could stick one in the RV and then just power the rest of the house by it.
That could be an option. We do require you to attach to an RV to make it work. You got to validate your VIN number and whatnot.
I'm just telling you, it's significantly cheaper than what I pay for Wi-Fi right now.
I think we all feel that pain a little bit on our unlimited data plans. There's also for seasonal RVers. There's also a $25 plan, which gets you 5 gigs of data a month. So we've got a couple of plans to wrap around the different lifestyles for RVers.
All right, I'm now really seriously considering moving into an RV rather than my house. There cannot be a downside to this, except I guess I'd probably have to pay taxes, and in some state I don't want to pay taxes in when I spend more time. There's going to be a downside to taxes living in an RV, I'm sure. I'm sure they get me somehow.
You just have to move your residence to a state without income tax, and you should be good to go.
You're not helping my case, by the way, of moving out of my house into an RV. Steve,
last weekend I did a podcast interview with folks who had just moved into their RV and were doing their podcast from the road for the next 6 months. So it's a real thing.
Yeah, interesting. Steve, how can we find out more?
You can go to runswithtogo.com or runswithtogo.com/roadlink, and all the details are there.
All right. Well, look forward to it. Thanks for spending some time with us today. I keep thinking that maybe it's not such a good idea to buy myself an RV, and then I keep coming across stuff like this, like $300 a year or $360 a year, $30 a month for internet. That doesn't sound bad. That's considerably cheaper than I think we've been paying. I pay now probably about $60 a month. $60 a month. So I'm paying double that. That's great, as long as the data speeds would be enough to transfer all my radio station files back and forth. I could just do the show from being on the road. We are talking about. We've been talking about the Northwest Automotive Press Association Mudfest Awards, John. So this next year will be 26. Will anything change for the 26th year, or have you found a winning formula?
Well, we've had a winning formula, but we're always changing it, and there are always going to be new vehicles. I mean, there are a host of new SUVs coming out this year.
We've seen some of them at auto shows. I have noticed that the 3-4 biggest new electric cars that have come out in the last year have all been SUVs. Hyundai Kona electric, EQC from Mercedes-Benz, the e-tron, and the Jaguar I-Pace.
Well, then there's that Tesla SUV that's another Tesla SUV.
I don't know who that is. The Model Y, you mean? Or
Model Y.
Yeah. So there is, and I think if you look back, I mean, most of them are electric SUVs. I just spent some time in Norway where you cannot drive in downtown Oslo unless you have an electric vehicle. They've stopped you. And electric vehicles can go wrong way up the one-way street, which is, boy, is that scary.
And we have two models coming out from Ford. The new Lincoln Nautilus and Aviator, new Explorer, all electrified.
And then the rumor is that at the LA Auto Show, they are going to announce a brand new electric vehicle, which is going to be their first all-electric SUV for Ford. So that's
interesting times.
It was earmarked as the Mach 1 originally, the Mark 1. Depends on how you say it.
There might be a time in the future where we have an electric vehicle category at Mudfest.
Ooh. Actually, you probably could do it almost now. Although
I'm pretty close now.
I'm not sure they all could do the off-roading. They could definitely not do the extreme course, but they could probably do the non-extreme course. That was fairly easy, the non-extreme course. A lot of even cars could have made that. We could have had some cars in there that were all-wheel drive. So, when, you wouldn't do this in your own vehicle, as we said at the beginning of the show.
Nobody's going to do this in their own vehicle.
It takes quite a bit of skill to do the extreme course, doesn't it?
Yeah, we're nowhere near matching the capabilities of these vehicles. We're testing the ability of the driver.
And then you see the bigger the vehicle and the more sort of capable the vehicle, the easier it is to get around this course. I mean, the Power Wagon, some of those rocks, the Power Wagons, you hardly felt going over them. It's kind of interesting.
We pass it enough times, the Power Wagon would just break the rocks.
Do you think, when it comes down to it, that people will take these results and it helps the public actually buy vehicles by how the journalists test them?
I think it does. I think people, even if they're not going to use the capability, they want to know that it's there.
There was quite a few journalists from publications which you'd obviously be very familiar in your household. U.S. News and World Report. We had guys out there from a lot of big, MSN Autos. We had people out there from a lot of big publications. So New York Times. You'll start to see those appear. Those videos and stories, Amazon. You'll start to see them appear over the next few months. And so, talking about the vehicles.
In fact, the results are already up on MSN.
Oh, are they? They already they blew me. They beat me to the punch.
Perry has a story up.
Yeah, it definitely is a beautiful. We were on the Union. Was it Union Canal, which is
the Hood Canal near Union, Washington.
Right, Hood Canal, which is a beautiful, beautiful part of the country to live in. It has been fairly wet and cold at that time of year, but not this year. We managed to get away with it. All right, still to come on the show. Got a bunch more stuff coming your way. We're also going to talk about new electric cars from VW. That's and some Hennessey Performance, which Perry got to do. That's coming up as your radio show and our auto expert continues.
Welcome to the Fast Lane. Nik Miles is our auto expert, so drop it into gear. You've got a green flag. Here's Nik.
You know, I used to think that Hennessey Performance was just a figment of everybody's imagination, because we see lots of really great cars that this supposed Hennessey car company puts out, but I never actually got to drive one or see one in person. But Perry Stern got to spend some time with Hennessey. Perry, did you really get to sit inside some of their vehicles?
I not only sat inside them, I drove them and saw the facility where they build them.
So they're real. They're not just a figment of posters which were on my bedroom wall as a kid.
No, they actually do exist. They're building a very large number of vehicles. They have about 18 bays in their shop, building, as they like to call it, they make fast cars go faster.
So tell us a little bit about the company. How did it get started, and how long have they been doing cool modified vehicles?
So John Hennessey is the founder of the organization, of the company, and he's always been into taking cars and making them faster. And he started it back in 1991. He bought a Mitsubishi 3000 GT VR4, and that's a mouthful. And basically customized it, added more power, and went on to be very successful in racing Pikes Peak Hill Climb, Bonneville Salt Flats. He hit 177 miles an hour in this vehicle that he basically put together himself. But then they went on and built customized Vipers, which is really what got them on the map. They produced 650 horsepower Vipers. They built a Ford GT with a twin turbo engine that put out 1,000 horsepower. And then they built this, or basically purchased and built this 30,000 square foot facility that comes with its own drag strip parked out in back.
Oh, does every car get tested?
I would hope so, yeah.
Did you? So you went to the factory?
Yes. So I went to the factory, and keep in mind, they're not building cars from scratch, although they're going to. I'll get to that in a moment. But they're taking vehicles like Camaros, Grand Cherokees, Corvettes, Mustangs, and increasing performance. Everything from exhaust to putting, engine swaps, putting turbos on them. And they, even the Europeans. So, for example, the car that Hennessey's son-in-law picked me up from my hotel to take me to their facility was a McLaren 720S, which is an incredible car to start with. They had bumped it up to 900 horsepower.
I think you left a vehicle out of your list there, the Raptor.
I did drive that one, too. The McLaren was cool. The Raptor was a six-wheel drive pickup truck.
Whoa. I mean, all these modifications, Perry, do you have to sell your house to actually buy one?
It's not that bad. You have to remember, though, you have to either own the vehicle already or buy the vehicle. So the Velociraptor is an extreme case. So this is a vehicle where they take an F-150 Raptor, which is already a pretty impressive vehicle.
$100,000-ish.
Yeah, exactly. They give it six-wheel drive. They bump the horsepower.
They give it six wheels before they give it six-wheel drive, right?
Yes. So it's minor details. So yes.
Perry, ignore John. He's just being a brat.
I try to. It's got dual axles in the back, so technically it's four-wheel drive all the time. And then when you shift it into what would normally be four-wheel, you get six-wheel drive. It's also been bumped up to 600 horsepower because that's kind of what Hennessey does. The truck looks really cool, and it drives like a normal truck. I mean, you'd expect it to bind as you're going around corners, but it drives like a normal truck. I actually took it out to their drag strip and got it up to about 100 miles an hour before you kind of had to slam on the brakes because once the thing gets going, it's a lot of mass. But this one will put you back about $300,000, all told. But
now, does that wait? Is $300,000 in price the price of the truck included in that? Because the truck's about $100,000, $90,000 to $100,000 truck anyway, right?
It's not quite that much. It's more like 50, 60. But yes, that includes the price of the truck.
Well, I guess it's 50, 60 depending on how easy you can get one and what sort of extras you want on it, right?
Exactly. And so, but this is a truck, this isn't something that people are going to go off-roading with all that much. This is a truck that you drive up to the valet stand and you blow everybody away. Because it just looks so extreme.
Wait, I'm not giving a valet the keys to my truck that has 600 horsepower. I could just imagine there sitting in with my first cocktail at the bar and hearing, there goes your truck.
It comes into the bar.
All right, so did you just get to drive that, or did you get to drive pretty much everything they had?
Well, I drove the McLaren, the 900 horsepower McLaren, which 0 to 60, they estimate about 2.5 seconds. It's ridiculous. And the funny thing is, with a car like that, and to some extent, I mean, yes, the Raptor with 6-wheel drive is going to stand out from everything, but you can make it as subtle as you want or as in your face as you want. So the McLaren, granted, a McLaren's going to stand out on its own anyway, but it looked like a stock McLaren. There was nothing different looking about it, except for the fact that they'd taken it up about 200 horsepower from its already extreme performance, and it drove like a regular car.
Do they let a lot of
it drove like a regular McLaren.
Do they let a lot of journalists in? Because I've never heard of anybody else getting to go to the Hennessey factory.
I think they do let some in. I mean, you can make an appointment and you can work out with them to come visit. But the one you're going to want to wait for, I mentioned that they typically custom build or customize cars that have already been created. They are working on their own vehicle, which is called the Venom F5. And this is going to be a over-the-top supercar. They've shown prototypes already at various auto shows. And in fact, they unveiled at Pebble Beach this year the engine that's going to go in it, which is a 7.6 liter twin turbo V8 that's going to put out at least 1,600 horsepower.
Wow. And do
1,300 pound-feet of torque.
3 miles a gallon or something, probably.
Yeah, like anybody will care.
That's like a half dozen Camrys.
Something like that. But their goal is 300 miles an hour.
Woo!
Which is still, one of those numbers that, Koenigsegg is shooting for, others have shot, are going for, but Hennessey, I'd say, has a good chance based on their past experience.
And based on based on the size of the engine too. Perry, where can we read about your exploits with Hennessey?
You can see this up on my site, which is autonext.net. I believe that if you look through on our Auto Expert, you'll find a story on the Hennessey, my Hennessey exploits, as you call them, as well.
Excellent. Perry Stern, a great contributor to the automotive world, and we are green with envy about your Hennessey experience. All right, coming up still on the show, a lot more stuff. Stand by. Here we go.
More of our Auto Expert with Nik Miles is on the way. He's Nik Miles, and this is our Auto Expert.
People often ask me to help them, and I know John Vincent is here from US News and World Report. They ask me to help them buy a car. The usual thing for you, John?
All the time.
All the time. So, first of all, perhaps you can make some notes. Go grab a pencil and a piece of paper. Make some notes. When you ask me what's a good car, give me at least a couple of barriers. Like, the Hennessey's great if you've got $300,000. If you're going to ask me what's a good car, you got to give me, under $30,000. Sedan, SUV, mid-size. At least give me some parameters.
And don't tell me what you want. Tell me what you need.
Right. So I had somebody that called me recently, and they said, in your opinion, and this person is a famous luggage repair guy, in your opinion, what's the best truck? So I said to this guy, first of all, do you need diesel? Do you need gas? Are you talking about a 2500 size, heavy duty? You're talking about light trucks, small truck? What are you talking about? I mean, there's like 3 different categories for most people. There's only one luxury truck manufacturer, technically, in the U.S. I mean, just give me some ideas about what you want. I ran into them on the street the other day. I said, did you go for what you wanted? They said, yeah, we bought a Prius. I'm like, I have this 25-minute conversation with this guy, and he ends up buying a Prius.
Okay, so here's another do not do. Don't give me a call. Ask me what I think about a certain car. Let me riff on that car for about 2 minutes or so and tell you, it's okay, but there are much, much better versions out there, much, much better models out there. And then say, George is shaking his head when you say that. I go, who's George? He goes, he's the salesman. We have him on the speakerphone.
Someone really called you from the office of a dealer?
They called me from the office of a dealership.
Really? I will always be 100% honest with you. If you come to me with a car choice, I will tell you. You also have to separate both sides of your brain, left brain and right brain. There are emotional purchases, and there are advanced, literally, technically correct purchases for those people who like to make unemotional purchases. And you have to separate the two. If you're going to make an emotional purchase, it's going to be a lot of money. It's going to be highly exhilarating. If you're going to make a non-emotional purchase, it's going to be very reliable, very safe, cost-worthy, and sometimes uninspirational. But ultimately, you have to make the separation. Are you buying something because it's got the name badge on it and because your heart sings when you put your foot on the gas? Or are you buying something because you want it to last the next 20 years? Those are two separations.
And when you come to us, any automotive journalist, and ask, what do you think about this car? Our first question is going to be, did you just buy one?
Yeah.
Because I think we have all gotten that question, torn the car apart, right, and then have them say, I just bought one.
Right. My interesting, if I look at my YouTube channel, a lot of the comments on my YouTube channel are, I love this car, I just purchased it. And then there'll be an addendum, things down. You didn't mention that when you reviewed this vehicle 5 years ago, that it had a starter recall. Well, it didn't 5 years ago when I reviewed it. So you also got to understand that the 1,500 YouTube videos that I have up, they were done at the time the car was new. I did not know that Takata would be recalling their airbags 10 years ago when I started review vehicles.
Another piece of advice is there's some really good information on vehicle user forums, and every vehicle has a forum out there online somewhere about from buyers. Those are all of the people that want to complain about their vehicle. If you read those reviews, you will never buy that vehicle.
Yeah. I also, a good question to ask me about something is, when I ask my veterinarian, so we go in there and the veterinarian comes up with a bunch of stuff. I said, what would you do if this was your dog? And that's a really good question. So because she will always tell me the truth. Like I would, if it was my dog, I'd be doing this, this, and this. So, because the veterinarian always wants to err on the side of caution and do a whole bunch of tests. However, if you say, Nick, would you spend your money on this car? It's a really good indication of whether you should buy it or not. Would I spend my money on it? Probably not. There are other things in this category that are maybe more valuable.
And Nick, what would you spend your own money on right now?
I have two vehicles that I am thinking really seriously about. The Supra, the new Toyota Supra, and the Kia Telluride. The two vehicles I am seriously considering buying. Do I need one? No. Should I buy one? No. Do I want one? Yes. Those are the simple questions. What about you, John? What are you thinking about spending your money on?
Well, actually, I have a 10-year-old Acura RDX right now that is up for replacement, and I'm looking at the new Honda Passport. And I'm looking at the new RDX.
Yep.
I'm looking at the Telluride.
Yep.
Looking at Volkswagen Atlas.
Yep.
And Subaru Ascent.
I think Subaru Ascent is great. Atlas is great. I wouldn't have any. In fact, all those cars, I wouldn't have any problem in buying them. Although I think I did a comparison recently of the Atlas versus Telluride versus Ascent. And each of those are very slightly different depending on lifestyle. For instance, if you have kids that are in car seats and you have 3 kids that are in car seats, there's only one vehicle that you should buy out of those 3, and that's the Atlas. Because it's the only one that you can fold all the rows, the second row forward, and still get into the third row when all 3 car seats are attached in the center. That's the only one that does it. So there are some very specific things in those vehicles that you should buy. If you want an all-wheel drive system, and you like to do a little bit of spirited driving, that the Ascent is definitely the car that has the best all-wheel drive system. And it also has the Boxer engine, which is a low center of gravity, which means the vehicle will not roll an awful lot if you do some spirited driving. But it does have a 4-cylinder, so you have to remember that too.
But that 4-cylinder, it can tow an Airstream with that 4-cylinder.
Yep. So there's some very specific things on there. I still am very attracted to the Telluride. Never thought I would say that. But there is the Hyundai version of that car, the Palisade, that comes out this summer. So
soon,
in the next couple months. So you might want to wait if you're thinking about buying one until that comes out.
And then there's a fairly good chance that I'll just toss out that list and buy an Audi SQ5.
Your wife's going to let you do that?
My wife might be driving it.
What does that mean? You're going to be driving the minivan?
No.
I'm just saying. Like, I've tried that trick too, John. I've tried that, saying that to my spouse several times. It's like, well, you'd be driving it. Then they're like, hey, when do I get to drive the really sporty, cool car?
And just so you know, our minivan rocks.
No, it does. There is no complaints there. The embedded vacuum is amazing in that minivan. But do you honestly think that you guys will be sharing those vehicles equally? I'm just saying.
No.
You buy an SQ5. I don't know if that's going to happen. To be honest with you, when you've got a sporty SUV sitting in your driveway, or you've got a minivan, it's really hard sometimes to take the minivan. Even though it rocks, it's hard to take the minivan.
Yeah, and my lovely wife threw a curveball at me yesterday by saying, do we really need to buy another car that takes premium gas?
Yeah, let's think about that. What car would you own that doesn't take premium gas?
Honda Passport.
The Passport. That's probably a good choice. I was very impressed with that vehicle. Even though it's slightly bigger than things like the RAV4, I think the Honda Passport is an excellent piece of machinery. Car choices. You know what? Shopping for a car is the best thing to do. Buying one is a terrible idea, because when you buy a new vehicle, you can no longer shop for a new vehicle. And that's always been my problem. I enjoy shopping way more than I do actually owning a new vehicle. Deciding what I'm going to buy is by far the much more exciting pathway to take. Coming up, Anton Walhman's going to be here. We're going to talk about electric cars. We're going to talk about new VW, lots of stuff. That's as the show continues.
More Auto Expert with Nik Miles is on the way. It's our Auto Expert with Nik Miles.
So, here's the interesting thing. I have occasionally vehicles delivered to my house via a semi-truck. Today was one of those days, semi-truck coming through my neighborhood, and the guy said to me, what do you think of them? Oh, first of all, he said, you said you had to have the car delivered before your radio show, so I looked you up online, and I need to ask you a bunch of questions. What do you think of them? They're Teslas. I was like, well, here's the deal. I think that the technology in them is far advanced. It's interesting that Consumer Reports listed the Tesla infotainment system as one of the best. But by the way, John Vincent's still with us from US News and World Report. I guess we should make sure that if we're going to talk about Teslas, we should bring in our guest, Anton Walhman, because Anton joins us every week to talk about the latest innovations in electric cars. Anton, when someone says to me, what do you think about Tesla, how would you answer that question?
Well, Nick, that's as loaded one as a bomber in World War II, because you can advocate on about 15 sides of that equation, depending on where you're coming from and where you're going and who the person is. So, you really have to figure out, what your tolerance as a buyer is going to be for something called reliability. Because if you have a very low tolerance for say, a big screen going out that controls everything in the automobile, then maybe you should consider something that you have a higher degree of confidence it's actually going to work all the time. And if you have other concerns about more basic forms of technology, such as how about the doors opening and closing every time, and that the door handles do not freeze when temperatures start falling below 30 or so degrees, and how about things like the glass roof or the trunk not leaking water into the automobile? You know, it's a little bit like buying a very exotic car, right? When you're buying a Lamborghini or a McLaren, for all of those who make that your annual habit, you'll probably recognize that when you're buying a very exotic car, you are going to have to tolerate things that the average purchaser of a Toyota Corolla or Honda Civic never have to think about, let alone want to think about. So I think that's probably the best way to start framing the issue.
So I, would maybe just turn and walk away rather than answer any questions. Because
a lot of people, people buy cars for different reasons. A famous former CEO of one of the largest automakers in the world used to tell us, as you may recall, that buying an automobile is a little bit like somewhere between buying a refrigerator and buying a puppy. On the one hand, it's an entirely irrational decision. You're buying a square piece of metal that just needs to work. On the other hand, it's a purely emotional decision. Some people find it to be a very emotional decision to floor the automobile and get from 0 to 60 in below 3 seconds. And that's why people buy a McLaren, or they buy maybe a Tesla, or maybe a Porsche 911 Turbo S. Other people, they just want to make sure that the car starts in the morning and takes them from point A to point B reliably. They do not want to see a service center to save their life. And if they do, it needs to be a quick, painless, and most importantly, an inexpensive proposition if they ever should come to pass, right? If they ever have to bring it in for something. And those are very different motivations. So what motivates one buyer to be tolerant of lack of reliability may not be all that important for another quite more exotic person.
The difficulty was that a lot of times people ask me, what do you think about Tesla? And then they answer the question before my mouth even gets open, because they'll tell me what they think about Tesla. And quite often you just have to let them go. Because
here's the thing, right? I mean, Tesla's done a few interesting things. I mean, first of all, I think they've designed a couple of their cars very, very well. They have a former ex-Mazda designer that I think has done a terrific job in coming up with a very clean shape of an automobile. But if you look at a Model S, especially when it came out, but still today it's holding up rather well. I think the Model 3 looks very, very good. I'm one of the few people who even like the Model X, even though a lot of other people tend to think that it looks more like a fat guppy of some sort. And then what they've done is that they have had a lot of innovations in the area of software in terms of centralizing the computer architecture in the car, making it remotely updatable for those who think that is exciting, and coming up with neat little various types of party tricks, right, that other automobiles simply haven't been able to do. So clearly the company is ahead in terms of software development, and if you're one of those who appreciate quick advancements in software features, then clearly Tesla is going to be ahead of the game.
I think they've definitely caught our attention in the last few years, and I would hasten to add that most car companies who are designing electric cars nowadays probably have every model of Tesla sitting in their R&D development center, pulling them apart, working out how they work, because Tesla definitely got everybody's attention. But some of the new SUVs and some of the new all-electric cars, SUVs, trucks are starting to filter into existence, or at least get ready to take orders and starting to be produced. And yesterday, this recently, no exemption from VW, they showed their new ID3 and then started to take some orders of this vehicle. And even though delivery is quite a long way off, they seem to get an awful lot of deposits for the first 48 hours.
That's right. So this new vehicle that Volkswagen just showed here on last Wednesday May, whatever date it was, May 8th, is basically its first from the ground up pure electric car that is, 100% has no bearing whatsoever, even distant cousin from any previous type of vehicle they've ever had. Okay, so this is their first truly clean sheet in every which way, and it goes into production in November of this year. And the first 48 hours, they got about 10,000 deposits on this thing, and people will start taking delivery around this time next year.
Is this the first time that VW have done pre-orders of an electric vehicle? Because most of them, were you able to pre-order any other electric vehicle from VW?
Well, so there are a couple of sort of mini exceptions here, right? We have the Audi e-tron, which just went on sale in Europe March 15, and where deliveries began about a week ago here in the United States. The Audi, you could put a deposit on it last September, but all of these deposits, I don't care whether it's Tesla or Volkswagen, Audi, or anybody else, keep in mind that all of these deposits are always 100% refundable. So when you hear large deposit numbers, honestly, they don't mean all that much, because you can, until you actually sign on the dotted line, hand over the check, and drive off the lot, that deposit, per law here in the United States anyway, is always fully refundable. And it's a similar situation in many countries in Europe. There are only a couple of exceptions. I think actually Norway is the one country where dealers can actually force you to put a deposit, and there's no way to get out of it.
All right, Anton, let's
here in the United States. Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, I want to talk about the Mercedes-Benz EQC, because I got to drive that for the first time, and that was a jaw dropper. That's all as our auto expert continues here. More electric cars coming up from around the world.
More of our auto expert with Nik Miles is coming up. He's Nik Miles, and this is our auto expert.
We have John Vincent in studio here. He is from US News and World Report. On the phone, Anton Walhman. He is our independent analyst and investor. We're talking about some of the big topics around electric and alternative vehicles. So, Anton, I hear you every week talk about Norway and Sweden and how they are the leaders in electric vehicles. They set the pace for the rest of the world. I just got back yesterday from Norway for the first time, and in April, I think they delivered for the first time more electric vehicles. They sold more electric vehicles than they did gasoline vehicles. The Norwegians really have a bee in their bonnet about electric vehicles, don't they?
That's right. So Norway has the highest percentage of electric car sales of any country in the world by a fairly wide margin. In March, they hit 58% being pure electric cars, and you add another 10 or so percentage points to include plug-in hybrids. So all in all there, anything with a plug was about 2/3 of all sales in Norway in the month of March. Now, it cooled things down a little bit in April, because March was sort of the peak delivery month of the Tesla Model 3, where they jammed in over 5,300 units, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it was basically a third of the entire car market in Norway. A third of the entire car market was one model alone, the Tesla Model 3, in the month of March. And that probably won't repeat itself anytime soon, but they will be selling less expensive versions of the Model 3 in Norway starting here in June. And we should probably see a little bit of an uptick in sales in June from fairly low numbers here in April and May. And with that, we also have, of course, the new premium cars selling very well in Norway, which is a rich country to begin with. But if you look at the combined sales of the Jaguar I-Pace and the Audi e-tron, those are quite high. I mean, they do outsell Tesla Model S and X combined by a factor of 6-1, which is an enormous sales discrepancy. And now, in just a few short months from now, they'll get the Mercedes EQC, which I believe you have had a chance to press in the flesh here just a few days ago.
Yeah, I think next to the e-Golf it is the best adapted platform. I think it's a GLC before it gets adapted into the EQC. But next to the e-Golf, it's the best adapted platform for moving from gas to electric that I've ever driven. And they had to add a little bit of safety in there because the engine doesn't have a transmission. And so in case of an accident, they had to put some reinforcements to stop the engine moving, or the motor. I guess in this, it always confuses me how you can have motor oil, but you have an electric, engine. It doesn't, and we don't as human beings have a clear definition of what an engine and a motor is, even though we have rules.
Just use power plant. It's much easier.
There you go. The power plant had to have some extra supports on there, but boy, that's a great piece of machinery. I finally got out of the Germans that it should charge from 10% to 80 or 90% in about 40 minutes on a high capacity charger. But, and that of around 200 miles is no, there's no exception to you probably needing more energy than that at any one time. If you're going to go 200 miles, you can probably use 40-minute break between every 200-mile driving just to recharge your vehicle. And Norway is interesting because there was a lot of camo vehicles driving around there, vehicles that are camouflage that are being tested right now. The other thing that made my jaw drop a little bit is next to Saudi Arabia, Norway is the largest oil producer in the world, which is...
Well, I think they're the second most largest oil exporter in the world, and not producer.
Exporter.
But definitely they're right up there. And I think the most interesting story, though, that I think the Mercedes exemplifies or will soon exemplify is the impact that eventually pricing is going to have on the field of electric cars. Because so far the novelty value has been so high that we've been really focused on, first of all, are there going to be, any competitors at all in this market to speak of? And then, we're just trying to fill out the various segments. I mean, the first SUV, the first this or that, the first minivan. And now we're going to get into a point here where we're going to have so many of these various cars on the market that the companies are really going to have to start compete on pricing, and that's where I think the Mercedes enters the market at a critical point in the market, because we're starting to see sort of signs of saturation in the market on a variety of fronts. I mean, in the various look at the sales charts, anywhere from Norway to the Netherlands to the United States, I mean, things are starting to taper off a bit on the, especially when you get, above that $45,000 price point. Now, once you get below below $35,000, it's clear that, if you put a car into those lower price points, it does sell very well. But at some point, the overall market size for these cars that start in the 40s and well equipped are well into the 50s, 60s, let alone 70s or 80s. I mean, I already see the signs of saturation. You should go and visit some of the local Audi dealers that just got their e-tron units for the first time here within the last week or two. And it's not that easy to convert deposit holders into actual buyers. And that's this is going to be a big story over the next few months here. And then Mercedes may very well be one of them who are going to be having to lead a bit of a price war, I think, against the likes of Jaguar and Audi, and of course the incumbent Tesla here. And that is going to be the thing to watch here in the next few months.
I've been watching Jaguar deals, and there are 0% deals for 6 or 7 years on the I-Pace already.
That's right. And I was just swung by one just literally within the last couple of hours just to get a fresh update. And it said, look, you get $5,000 cash off from the manufacturer plus some untold amount from us here, the dealer, depending on how long this unit has been sitting on the lot. Lease deals are basically $5,000 down and $799 starting, price per month, plus tax obviously on top of it. And those were deals you couldn't get as of January of this year. So clearly over the last 90 days, prices have started coming down on some of these things. And I think this is more the beginning than the end. I think that we're going to be seeing this. I mean, just look at how much Tesla has lowered their lease prices in the not even one full month that they've been offering Model 3s for lease. They started offering them for $3,000 down and $500 something per month and up. And just a week ago, they cut the price to $399. I mean, they're pretty desperate to get rid of units at this point, and that's why I'm wondering. I mean, are we really witnessing a broad-based wave in the market, or are we witnessing that there was basically a fixed buyer base, and it's just really tough to go beyond these early adopters, or is there something completely different going on? Is it the case, whether we like it or not, that maybe the reputation of some of these cars are not as positive as the big fans seem to want to say that they are? And this has not yet been sorted out, but I think the pricing will be the key factor to watch here in the coming months.
So, Anton, do you think that Tesla has a whole bunch of really smart people in their pricing department, or just a big dartboard?
No, I think in Tesla's case, it's very simple. I mean, keep in mind, Tesla only sells electric cars, and they have fixed supplier agreements with Panasonic, which supplies them with all the batteries. Tesla basically needs to move X number of units every quarter, and they're going to set the price to whatever it takes to move those number of units. So for Tesla, it's very simple. They just got to keep lowering and lowering the prices so that they can sell close to 90,000 cars per quarter. I mean, that's an iron rule over there, because unlike other automakers that sell electric cars so that they can sell the cars where they actually make money, Tesla has no cars that actually make money. Tesla lost over $11,000 per car sold in the March quarter that they reported, the most recent financial report that they issued here at the end of April, and they have no offsets. So they have no way to make money at this point. They just have to move these units at ever increasing losses.
There seems to be a hole too with the whole Tesla plan. Is if you lease a Tesla, they have no way to resell that when it comes back from a lease, because they don't sell used Teslas in their stores. Isn't that right?
No, I don't think that's right, actually. I mean, they do sell them. They don't necessarily let them sit in the showroom per se, but there is an online database. You can go in and buy used Teslas, all right? And that in itself is a big issue, because the second-hand pricing of these Teslas are very, very volatile at this point, and I think you'll also see a lot of movement in that here pretty soon, because a lot of these cars are coming back now. And there was a very interesting report somebody put together just today from Norway, where they looked at the cumulative installed base in Norway of Model S's. Did you forget about the Model X, and forget about the Model 3, just the S, the one model that's been there the longest. It actually peaked in January. So at this point, the number of units sold since January 1st of Tesla Model S into the Norwegian market, which is the second largest EV market in the world, is now lower than the number of Model S's that are being scrapped or otherwise deregistered. So whether they're being scrapped because of accidents or they just can't be repaired or whatever, that number is now larger than the new registrations from newly sold vehicles, which is kind of an interesting phenomenon here that plays into this used car situation.
The other thing about Tesla's used cars, which is tougher, is that are you going to buy, me personally, unlikely to buy a vehicle that I haven't looked at closely that has been gently used, because you never quite know what you're getting. At least you want to drive it. At least you want to look at it. At least you want to inspect it, because we've seen this with real estate several times. The pictures do not do actually seeing something justice. Pictures can be taken at a certain angle. The drive, the experience of you. I mean, it's unlikely to buy a home without walking through it. You're even more unlikely to probably buy a car without at least setting eyes on it, if not driving it. So doesn't that present a challenge to Tesla as well?
No, this is a phenomenon that is equally due to all cars in the market, has always been the case, will always be the case in the future. And to the extent that Tesla does not do a good job of allowing buyers to basically inspect and test drive these used cars, then they will have a tougher time moving that. We've already seen how Mannheim and other auction sites have had a really hard time moving used Teslas and have rejected them, and they're floating around in the system. We have huge storage lots around the country where these cars are sitting, and they certainly could need some help in that department of figuring out what to do with the second-hand market of Teslas, because that is a weak spot of the company right now, and it's a financial burden for them. You may look at their quarterly financial statements and see a line called service and other you would think, okay, what is service and other? Well, obviously it's service, right? But the other thing that goes into that bucket is used car sales, both the trade-ins and their own, both the Tesla branded cars and the non-Tesla branded cars. And last quarter, I think the margin in that business was like negative 38%. So, I mean, what other car company in the world has a negative margin? The gross margins, that's before any of the overhead, okay? That's just the loss on the actual units before you've paid for the real estate and the personnel costs of minus anything, let alone minus 38%. These are, that's like a staggering level of inefficiency. I think the U.S. Post Office could do a better job.
Anton, it's always good to talk to you. Where can we read your articles?
You can read them in two places. You can read them on seekingalpha.com, and you can read them on a site called thestreet.com.
Excellent. Anton Walhman and John Vincent, thank you for joining us from US News and World Report. Of course, you can see and hear everything you want to at ourautoexpert.com or all the social media channels.